Hello, friends. Thanks for being here. I hope this podcast finds you healthy and secure. Um, Stick around if you have any doubts, and we'll see how we can repair that. Today, we're going to start. We may finish, but there's quite a lot in this letter, this Go show. It's titled Great Bodhisattva Hachiman. And so we're going to get kind of a peek at something I've hinted at or mentioned in passing in several Go shows. It's something that happens in uh, teaching Buddhism, which is more linked to the expedient means method than our actual practice. But it is helpful to keep in mind how some of these stories and letters reference all of these Japanese deities, if you will. As you know, there are no deities in Buddhism. But it's confusing because we read about these things labeled either through the magnificence of translation by Westerners. We get these characterizations that are sometimes rather misleading. So we're going to take one on face on in this one. We are, after all, practicing Nichiren's doctrine, or at least we're reviewing his Go show in this series. And he is a Japanese monk. And so he often speaks, in fact, you could say his whole life's mission speaks to the rituals and traditions and the obstacles that he is facing at the beginning of the latter day of the law for the propagation of the Lotus Sutra, certainly, but with specificity to the Japanese people, the Japanese country, the Japanese shogunate, the very authoritarian government. And in speaking to that, he's speaking to a great history of Japan that's very much a part of everyone growing up. And just like in your own country, these symbols like flag or queen or president or whatever country you're in, they have a long history to them. And a lot of that history is colored by not necessarily facts, but belief systems, right? And a big part of Japan's maturation and developments over the centuries was a particular Japanese mythology. Warriors that then become deified and then perceived to be personified by a great character, a general, a ruler, a samurai, or an emperor who embodies the very aspects of that mythology that they're hanging on to, so on and so forth. So in this case, we're going to talk about Hachiman. And Hachiman has a varied history in Japan. In fact, perhaps it would be of some service to read the background on this one, taking it with a grain of salt, as you know, we have to understand that the background too was written by interpreters and translators. But it'll be a bit of a guide. It'll introduce perhaps some factoids that will help us understand, as Nichiren, and this is the main point, Nichiren will both use this mythology of Japan to illustrate the Japanese people, the traditions, and those conditions into which Nichiren is trying to clear the path for the proper practice of the Lotus Sutra and Shakyamuni's ultimate teachings, right? But at the same time, he knows the audience to whom he is speaking, so he is not above, as we know, not above using those very legendary references in an expedient way to convince people of the correct teachings of Shakyamuni Buddha. So as much as he stands as a clarifier teaching the Lotus Sutra. He's still a Japanese monk, and he still, in a way, services the mythologies in order to gain a path to understanding, a path to opening people's minds. So we shouldn't, when we read these letters, interpret Nichiren as upholding these mythologies in as equitable to Buddhism, or certainly Shakyamuni's ultimate teaching of the Lotus Sutra. He's not doing that. What he's doing is expedient means. He's trying to bring people to understanding from where they are. So in a very real way, he's teaching to the people's capacity, just as his mentor Shakyamuni did, right? Whether or not you can say that this is inappropriate, that this is the latter day, he should just be going straight at the Lotus Sutra. Well, he does do that. He does that quite often, certainly in the remonstrations and all sorts of, when he's writing treatises and so forth. He's on the money, and we've heard him over and over again chastise these other teachers who call themselves Buddhists, but are obviously way wide of the mark, right? So he doesn't hold back any criticisms. And yet, perhaps out of compassion, perhaps out of his own upbringing, he speaks to the Japanese people with a slightly different tone, and he includes some of these mythologies and histories of Japan. I think he does it just as a way of gently moving them toward the Lotus Sutra. We can criticize and argue that all day long, but I think what's important for us is to understand that that's what he's doing. He's never saying you've got Hachiman here and Buddha here, and they're essentially the same. It may seem like he's doing that, but what he's doing is appealing to a centuries-long inculcated mythology in people's upbringing and trying to replace what they have passions for with a more correct understanding of the way the mind works, the Buddhist teachings work, and so that they can enter into the practice of the Lotus Sutra feeling confident and familiar. Did that work? Ultimately, I guess history shows us that it took many different forms after Nichiren's passing, but his teaching still maintains a very strong following, right? Albeit, my criticism, and retrospect is everything, right, is that several sects built off of those misunderstandings, and we have a myriad sects of Nichiren doctrine now, that some of which are completely nationalistic, some of which have gone way off the rails, created their own realities, and deviated strictly from Nichiren's words. So yeah, whether that would have happened one way or another, who's to say? I think we're fortunate that we have enough documentations that we can do as Shakyamuni's always told us to do, study broadly, and what bubbles up is truth, what bubbles up is clarity, and what doesn't belong is really rather obvious. The only thing to lament is how, just like in religions, so many times groups, sects, cults, they prohibit their practitioners from studying outside of what their particular doctrine is. And that's a formula for disaster, and that's what we cannot do as Buddhists, as Shakyamuni warned us. Don't do that. Study broadly, and you'll come to realization. Don't get the minute somebody tells you read this, don't read that, walk away, because you're being programmed, and that's not Buddhism. Okay, so Background on this was that Nichiren had written this letter 12th month of 3rd month of Koan, so 1280. He was rather prolific at that time. This is after he'd retired to Minobu, right? And that he wrote it to the wife of Shijo Kingo, Nichigo-Nyo, who we've read other letters to in the past. But the contents of the letter suggest that even though it's addressed to her, it was meant for both of them. We know a long a long habit of Nichiren's communications with Shijo Kingo back and forth. Shijo Kingo was a very important disciple, follower of Nichiren. So for him to write a letter to his wife is significant, but also Nichiren is fully aware that wife and husband will, exchange letters from him. He's very important in their lives, right? The body of the letter deals with Hachiman, who, along with the sun goddess, was one of the major deities in Japanese mythology. The identification of Hachiman with Emperor Onjin, or Orjin, is thought to have developed during the Nara and Heian periods from the 8th century through the 12th. Later, Hachiman became the object of veneration, favored by the warrior class. When everything shifted toward the shogunate, Hachiman took a different, changed his form, right? This is the nature of mythologies. And Minamoto no Yoritomo, the founder of the Kamakura shogunate, established a shrine to him in Kamakura. Hachiman also provides an early example of the melding of Buddhist and Shinto elements. So there it is. Hachiman is not a Buddhist. There are no deities in Buddhism, but he's not even a character in Buddhism. He only becomes a personification of Buddhist ideologies or ideas, personages, because he melds in with the Shinto Buddhism, which is a whole different thing than Shakyamuni's Buddhism. It's more of a religion. It's a national kind of religion that's sort of an umbrella over all these older mythologies. They come, bundled into the Shinto practice. With the spread of Buddhism in Japan, the Japanese deities came to be viewed as local manifestations of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Buddhas, not Buddha, and Bodhisattvas, right? Emanations or personages, personifications of aspect of the Buddhist teachings, right? And Hachiman was granted the title of Great Bodhisattva by the imperial court in the early Heian period. So, this definition of a bodhisattva for Hachiman would be more of, because he was seen in the warrior class as a deity. Remember, the early teachings of Hachiman was of an actual warrior who was very successful in battle and seen as a very important figure in Japanese formation of state of Japan, struggles with the Korean Empire and so forth. So you can read those stories of where Hachiman was created, if you will, the myth of Hachiman. But for then over time, for this Hachiman story to become such an inculcated part of Japanese identity, as Buddhism started to spread and Shinto formed itself over time and stole from Buddhism many ideas, and they started to get fluid with each other in terms. Hachiman then took a position of being this great protector and assisting Japan in forming it's the great country that it was or is, and therefore still to this day there are shrines to Hachiman, and he's seen as a great assister or assistance of identity for the country. So that's kind of a definition of Bodhisattva, although as Buddhists we know Bodhisattva, strictly speaking, is someone who assists others toward their path of enlightenment. So you see how the term gets it slides around here from a strict Buddhist understanding to a more general facilitator, protector kind of understanding. So don't be confused by them using the same term. They don't mean the same thing. By the Kamakura period, with the increasing popularity of Pure Land beliefs as Buddhism grew in Japan, most people began to regard great Bodhisattva Hachiman as a manifestation of Amida Buddha. Isn't that interesting? So we go from an actual, quite probably an actual warrior general, right, in history, to a mythological figure of an emanation of Shakyamuni, Amida, not a real person, but an ideal, an ideology of a personification of a Buddha, a facet of being Buddha. And Amida Buddha then sort of gets this weird little shot in the arm as being maybe an actual person. So that, you know, confusions over time, they're myriad, right? In this letter, Nichiren sharply criticizes this view and states unequivocally that Hachiman is a manifestation of Shakyamuni Buddha. So, manifestation, I would argue that that's not the right translation. What Nichiren, I'm sure, is saying is that Hachiman represents is a personification, that the ideology of what Hachiman represents to the Japanese is far more an influencer on the level of, and this is where he shifts from mythology to Buddhism, using the local lore, right? That he's much more a representative of Shakyamuni Buddha. So he's doing several things by saying that. He's saying, first of all, practice Buddhism correctly. Secondly, Amida Buddha is not a thing, is not a correct practice, because remember, this grows out of the growth of Pure Land teachings, which inculcate a lot of erroneous views about the Lotus Sutra. So even in saying that the Hachiman mythology is really an emanation of Shakyamuni Buddha, he's doing several things at the same time when he does that, right? He offers two pieces of evidence supporting his claim: a stone inscription in the province of Asumi and the coincidence of Shakyamuni Buddha and Emperor Ojin, who was identified with Hachiman, having exactly the same birth and death dates. Nichiren's description of the birth of Emperor Ojin differs in some particulars from the accounts given in the records of ancient matters and the chronicles of Japan, the earliest Japanese histories. Different versions of these texts and various traditions concerning historical events may have been in circulation in Nichiren's time. So, I don't need to finish that. Nichiren concludes the votaries of the Lotus Sutra are none other than honest persons. Yeah. So there was a burning of the great temple or shrine to Hachiman in Nichiren's day, and he uses that again as a teaching moment, saying that the people have driven away their protector Hachiman from the country. Hachiman was given the honorific that he protected honest people, and so having his shrine burned and him leaving the country in lore, in mental identity, Japanese identity, people would feel stripped of their protection. And Nichiren says, well, because of his connection with an emanation of Shakyamuni Buddha, he still is protecting those who are honest people within Japan. So that's the kind of letter we're going to read. It's going to shift around, but it's a deep, compassionate teaching to his fellow Japanese, that they come into the fold and practice Buddhism as it is supposed to have been taught through the Lotus Sutra, right? So, have I talked enough about that? Let's get rid of this, and let's see where we are time-wise. All right, so we have a little time. Let's get into it, shall we? I've received the white quilted robe and the 10 ryo of cotton that you were kind enough to send. So this would have been a gift from Shijo Kingo's wife. Therefore, the reply addressed to Shijo Kingo's wife, Nichigo-Nyo. The year is drawing to a close, and here in the mountains where I live, the wind blows fiercely, and my little dwelling is as full of holes as a wicker basket. Amazing that he lived as long as he did, right? I have the leaves of plants for my floor covering and wear clothes made of paper. So, and that's, well, you can read that footnote. So that my body becomes as cold as a stone, and the things I have to eat are like ice. When I received the quilted robe, I thought that I would put it on immediately and get warm, but you had written that it was for New Year's Day of the coming year. I wonder if even the Venerable Mahakashyapa, who retired to Mount Kukutapada to await the coming of the compassionate honored one, 5,670 million years in the future, could feel as impatient as I do. But enough of that. Shichiji Shiro told me that you have been discussing the Buddhist teachings in the presence of your Lord, Emma, which delights me to no end. In reward, I will write to you now about a very important doctrine. Most people, both the wise and the ignorant, will tell you that great Bodhisattva Hachiman is a manifestation of Amida Buddha. And this claim is not without reason. In the documents of Middle Antiquity and in oracles from Hachiman himself, there have been a few instances when he was identified with Amida Buddha. This has come about because people have each at heart become Nembutsu believers, so that they are like someone who mistakes a red stone for a lump of gold, or who looks at a stump in the field and sees a hare. The truth is that Hachiman is a manifestation of Shakyamuni Buddha. So this is when he's starting to break the beliefs that are inculcated in the culture through tradition, right? I say this because in the province of Osumi there is an inscription on a stone to that effect. That stone is now broken into two. On one part are written the two characters of the name Hachiman. The other part bears this inscription, quote, "Long ago on Eagle Peak he preached the Lotus Sutra of the wonderful law. Now he has manifested himself as the great Bodhisattva and resides in the main shrine," end quote. This is the first proof that Hachiman is Shakyamuni Buddha. But there is even more definite proof. Great Bodhisattva Hachiman's father was Emperor Chue, the 14th human sovereign of Japan. And interesting that he makes a point of saying human, right? And his mother was Empress Jingu, the 15th sovereign. Their son, Emperor Ajin, the 16th sovereign, was the one who now known as Great Bodhisattva Hachiman. His father, so he must have really embodied the spirit of the Hachiman myth, right? His father, Emperor Choi, being commanded by the sun goddess, was about to cross the ocean to attack the kingdom of Silla, Korea. But the king of Silla put a curse on him, and as a result, Emperor Choi passed away at Hakata. At that time, his consort, Empress Jingu, was already pregnant with the prince. But in order to avenge the late emperor, she amassed a force of several tens of thousands of horsemen and crossed the sea to the kingdom of Silla. While the ship was still on the waves, she could feel that the hour had come for her child to be born. At that time, Empress Jingu addressed the babe in her womb, saying, quote, "Are you a prince or are you a girl child? If you are a prince, then listen well to what I say. I am crossing over to the land of Silla in order to attack the enemy of your father, Emperor Choi. Since I am only a woman, I want you to act as my commander-in-chief. If you are destined to be the sovereign of Japan, then you must not be born just now, but must remain in my womb during the time of battle, and from there serve as commander-in-chief to my tens of thousands of horsemen, and carry out the attack on your father's enemy. But if you do not heed my words, and instead insist upon being born at once, then I will cast you into the sea. You must not bear a grudge against me." Wow. The child, accordingly, remained in the womb as before. What an amazing story. At that time, the empress donned a belt made of stones in order to chill her womb, and proceeded on her way to Silla, where she subjugated the kingdom. When she returned to Japan, she went to Usa Shrine in the province of Buzen, and there her child was born. He had been in the womb for 3 years, 6 months, and 3 days, and was born on the 8th day of the 4th month of a year with the cyclical sign Kinoetora. This was the child who was later to be known as Emperor Ojin. At the age of 80, he passed away on the 15th day of the 2nd month of a year with the sign Mizunoi Saru. He is the chief deity of Mount Otokoyama, a guardian deity to the dynasty that rules our country. His shrine form is not particularly unusual. His enshrined form is not particularly unusual, but he is nevertheless revered for his mysterious powers. He is the deity now known as Great Bodhisattva Hachiman. So there's always this story of battle, winning battles, conquests, that's attached to this characterization, this character Hachiman, right? Now the thus come one Shakyamuni was born in the kalpa of continuance in the 9th period of decrease, when the human lifespan measured 100 years. His father was King Shuddhadana, and his mother Lady Maya. He was born in the state of Kapilavastu in the central India, in a place called Lumbini Gardens, on the 8th day of the 4th month of a year, with the sign Kinoetora. After living for 80 years, he passed away on the bank of the Ajitavati River at Kushinagara in eastern India on the 15th day of the 2nd month of the year with the sign Mizunei Saru. It was the same with the present great Bodhisattva Hachiman. How interesting. Though one was born in India and the other in Japan, and though they had different fathers and mothers, both were born on the 8th day of the 4th month of the year with the sign Kinoetora, and died on the 15th day of the 2nd month of the year with the sign Mizunoi Saru. During the 2220 and more years since the Buddha passed away, whether in India, China, Japan, or anywhere else in the entire land of Jambudvipa, those born as sages and worthies are all said to have been manifestations of the thus come one Shakyamuni. But no one has ever heard of such a coincidence as the one I've just pointed out. So, being Japan, not unlike any other place in the world, lots of people ruled by mythologies and mystical beliefs. These are signs, right? So Nichiren is using them to the hilt. But he's using them to move them toward the Lotus Sutra, right? In addition to this, remember that her husband is a very important samurai, warrior. So there's no accident that he's talking about Hachiman so much, right? In addition to this strange coincidence, there is the matter of great Bodhisattva Hachiman's vow. When he preached the Lotus Sutra as Shakyamuni Buddha in India, he said, quote, honestly discarding expedient means, end quote, and in Japan he vowed that he would make his residence on the heads of Hon's persons. I think that's supposed to be honest persons. Let's fix that where there is honest persons. I'm going to make myself a note. There is always error. Nevertheless, on the 14th day of the last month, the 11th month, at the hour of the rat, 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., He burned down his sacred shrine and ascended to the heavens. If we consider the reason, we will see that though this deity had vowed to reside on the heads of honest persons, there it is, there were no longer any honest persons on whose heads he might reside. Being thus left without a dwelling place, he ascended to the heavens. In other words, see, his presence was no longer felt in Japan. But the strangest thing of all in this country of Japan is the fact that although its people have been born in a land related to the thus come one Shakyamuni, they have discarded this Buddha, and every one of them alike, have become followers of Amida Buddha. They have cast aside Shakyamuni, with whom they have a deep bond, and pay reverence to Amida Buddha, with whom they have no connection at all, because Amida Buddha is not an actual Buddha. He's a teaching of Buddha. In addition, they have taken the day when Shakyamuni, their father, passed away and assigned it to Amida, and taken the day when he was born and assigned it to Medicine Master Buddha. And though they appear to pay reverence to great Bodhisattva Hachiman, they claim that his true identity is Amida Buddha. They just slide this mythology all over the place, right? That's because these people are not following actual mental functions, mind, awareness. They're following authoritarian storytelling and mythologies rather than being anchored in real life experience. So Nichiren has a big battle trying to get these people to awaken, right? Because they're used to all this magical, mystical talk. And look at every religion in the world. They're the same. They all have this aspect of magical thinking, not based on anything that's actually experienced in life. It's all other. You don't have to explain it because it's other, or it happens after you die. So don't worry, your life is worth nothing. It's complete opposite of Buddhist thinking, which life is everything in Buddhism. This is your precious moment, right? Not only have they discarded both true identity and manifestation, but they treat as an enemy anyone who tries to point out this error. That is no doubt the reason why this deity, Hachiman, being powerless to correct the situation, has ascended to the heaven. In other words, he's left the mind of the people. Where are we time-wise? Oh, we got a little time. The moon will cast its image on water, but its reflection will not dwell in the muddy waters. However, it will be mirrored even in the drops of dew on the trees above and on the leaves of the grass, if the dew is clear and pure. And in the same way, Hachiman will undoubtedly take up his residence on the head of an honest person, even though that person may not be the ruler of the nation. Hachiman has vowed to take up residence on the heads of 100 rulers, and yet he did not reside on the heads of the 5 rulers of our nation, namely the 81st sovereign, Emperor Antoku, the 82nd sovereign, retired Emperor Oki, the 83rd sovereign, the retired Emperor Awa, the 84th sovereign, the retired Emperor of Sado, and the 85th sovereign, the Emperor of Hagashi Ichijo. He declined to do so because they had the heads of men who were fawning and crooked. And of course, he's listing these emperors because they all were pre-shogunate, pre-samurai rule. Instead, he took up residence on the heads of Yoritomo and Yoshitoki, samurai. Though these men were mere servants of the throne, this was no doubt because they were honest men. On considering this, we can see that because persons who put their strong mind of determination and conviction in the Lotus Sutra are following an honest doctrine, Shakyamuni Buddha himself will protect them. Right? See, now he slid from Hachiman to Shakyamuni. He's already set the stage for this. How then could it happen that great Bodhisattva Hachiman, who is his manifestation, his emanation, would fail to protect them, right? So he's using their inculcated belief and love for this storied, fabled leader protector, and he's shifting it to their understanding of what Shakyamuni Buddha represents in Buddhism, that they should start to anchor themselves in a more direct and experiential teaching, right? Though water may be pure at the outset, if it becomes muddied, the moon does not shine in it. But even though night soil is filthy, when it clears, the moon does not begrudge its reflection. The muddied water may be pure in nature, yet the moon does not shine in it. But the night soil, though impure in nature, reflects the moon's rays when it is clear. So we all know how mud settles in water, so there's a surface of clarity. So he's playing with this analogy. The muddy water may be likened to learned monks and eminent scholars who keep the precepts but turn their backs on the Lotus Sutra. Now he's getting specific. The night soil may be likened to ignorant people without precepts, whose greed is profound and whose anger is intense, but who put undivided, resolute mind and conviction in the Lotus Sutra alone. The scripture known as the Nirvana Sutra lists the beings that have been able to attain the way through the Lotus Sutra, and the list includes such filthy creatures as dung beetles, vipers, and scorpions. To express the wonderful power of the Lotus Sutra, Bodhisattva Nagarjuna says that it enables even such creatures as dung beetles to attain Buddhahood. The Nirvana Sutra also refers to persons who cannot become Buddhas even through the Lotus Sutra, defining them as Ichantikas, or those of incorrigible disbelief, who appear to be like arhats or like great bodhisattvas. They are like the muddy water that, though originally pure, does not reflect the moonlight. Thus the great Bodhisattva Hachiman, because he hates dishonesty, has ascended to the heavens or left the people of Japan. But when he sees the votaries of the Lotus Sutra, how could he begrudge shedding his light on them? My followers should believe the truth of this matter firmly. Great Bodhisattva Hachiman dwells with us here. Have no doubt about it. Have no doubt about it. With my deep respect, Nichiren. So, it's kind of shifty, but he's taking, a samurai's, a very notable samurai's family, him and his wife, and taking their cultural belief in the Bodhisattva Hachiman and stripping away any association because of the Nembutsu or Pure Land teachings that Hachiman is an incarnation, if you will, or an emanation of Amida Buddha, who is a mental construct himself, and shifting them to understand Hachiman is just a Japanese representation of Shakyamuni Buddha. Oh, Shakyamuni Buddha is the writer of the Lotus Sutra, the truth. So it's not a great leap for you to understand, the Lotus Sutra should be what you're practicing and learning and studying, because that is the teacher of your great protector, Shakyamuni Buddha, also known as Bodhisattva Hachiman. You see what Nichiren has done here? It's clever. I don't think we need to do that these days. I don't think there's a position or a deity that we could shift in any way that would represent Shakyamuni Buddha other than Shakyamuni Buddha. We're intelligent enough and detached enough from all of this magic that we can get that at face value, and we understand that Nichiren is the great Bodhisattva of our time, of our period of Buddhist teachings and the spread of Buddhism, right? But there's no end to the amount of magicians in the world today. Oh my God. We live in the age of greed, anger, and foolishness. Well, understand that anger part. In Buddhism, anger is this very thing of manipulating, creating mystical, magical beliefs, misleading, right? Obfuscating, backstabbing. That's what anger is in the world of anger, in the 10 worlds. You know, what we think of in the West as anger is more like rage and fury, and that's the world of hell in Buddhism. But the world of anger is destruction. It's destruction via, what's the word I'm looking for? It's destructive mental activities, causes that destroy other people's resolve or thinking, misleading them, right? It's very damaging. And if you need any example of that, just turn the news on for 10 minutes. It's everywhere. It's all over the world in every kind of form possible. People lifting their whole careers and avarice and wealth based on misleading. We even have terms for it now. You know, alternative facts. What the hell is that? Fake news, fake truth. We have a whole vocabulary around the world of anger these days. It's amazing. So how do we keep our heads straight? How do we know what is right? Well, what is right is what we can actually experience, not fables and stories, right? So when we chant Namo Myoho Renge Kyo to our mandala, our Nichiren mandala, not somebody else's, to awaken our Buddha mind, our Gohonzon, our pathway to our Buddha, we breathe it and we say it with conviction, and we envision our mind of clarity, our Buddha mind. Everything falls away and we feel that tingle. That's something real. That's experienced. That's not a fable. That's not a mythology. That's not magical. It's something we already have that sparked our life to begin with. That's when we start to see how amazing this precious little moment we have, we call a lifetime. Because it's only here that we can instantiate that Buddha mind. Right? Stay healthy. Be kind. Not everyone understands this. But be true to yourself. Be hard on yourself. Don't lazily chant and read the Lotus and, oh, this is entertaining and I do this, and it starts getting rote and habitual like that, then you're sliding toward Ichantika. You're not really into it. You're not convincing yourself. And whose fault is that? It's nobody else's. Buddhism and Buddha, it's all on you. No one can take it away, and no one can give it to you. Only you can manifest Buddha for yourself, your own path. So don't let yourself get lazy. Right? Chant to not be lazy. Whatever motivates you to connect, make sure that when you connect, it's with absolute focus. Everything else will fall away. I guarantee you. That's how it works. That's what this whole thing is about. The mandala, the sitting position, the strong vocalization, the repetition, the rhythm, the visual, right? It all unclouds the mind. The monkeys get quiet. The interluding thoughts, don't try to hang on to them. Let them go. Find what you're looking for in the middle of that mandala. And I promise you, you will manifest your Buddha. And with that, went on a little longer than I wanted to, but we got that whole go show in one go. Yay. And I can't wait till I see you in the next one. Take care of your health. Thank you for all your support. Don't forget to download the podcast if that's convenient for you. The Buddhahood podcast is available all over the place. And I will see you in the next one. Bye for now. Hey, thank you for being here. Did you know there's a third way you can help support this channel? And it won't cost you a cent. Yep, if you are not able to be a patron on Patreon, or use the PayPal me at .com at Sifu Sylvain, because you don't have the financial fortune to help support this channel right now, you, as I say, always support this channel by watching, but you can also help us grow so that maybe one day we can get over 10,000 subscribers and YouTube will grace us with monetization. It's not a lot, but if you can make sure you're subscribed and share a video, like a simple one, just go into the search criteria and type monk, and you'll have a video that'll come up that's been up for years about what is a monk. It's called monk, who, how, where, something like that. That might be a great introduction to somebody who doesn't understand what a monk is to begin with. It's a tool. Use this channel as a tool to help you with your Bodhisattva practice, and share a video to somebody who you think, oh, I know somebody who'll benefit from watching this. And in that way, you can help us grow. And that's a really good way to help your practice along as well. So just wanted to drop that in on you in case that's something that you might find useful. Take care of yourself again, and I'll see you soon. Bye.